Love and relationships and how to navigate them is the number one topic that shows up with my clients, and understandably so. It is perhaps the most important facet of our life. So, in this conversation, I speak to John O'Brien, who is a certified behavioral therapist who is focusing on attachment theory. His YouTube channel is all about exploring, discovering, and understanding your attachment style and also that of your partners, and how to work with your attachment style when it comes to relationships. In our conversations, we also touch on masculinity and also how to recover from a relationship that ends. I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And if you have any questions, of course, leave that in the comment section below this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our conversation here. What is it that led you to focus on relationships?
Life experiences of my own. I wanted to learn more about it. I mean, just talking with my friends and stuff, hearing about their relationship stories, and I've in my experience, the best way to learn is by teaching. When you can explain it to someone else, I think that for me,
Mm,
that's the best way to learn. Um,
mm,
so I started studying the science of attachment relationships and wanted to be able to explain it to other people. But that was also just a way for me to learn more about this stuff, about attachment styles and
mm,
relationship dynamics. So that's how I really got into it. I mean, lots of life experience, lots of stories from friends and family, and then just really studying the science behind that. I mean, you start to see patterns, and I want to share this with people. I want to share my experiences, what I've learned, and it helps for me to bring things into a better perspective and to understand relationship dynamics better from a more objective point of view.
mm. So, who's the writer or the author or the thinker around love, relationships, and attachment style that's like your favorite? Like, who's your go-to writer or creator?
I want to say my favorite go-to writer creator as far as relationships and just life stuff. I want to say Robert Greene.
Okay.
He was the author of the 48 Laws of Power.
Mm-hmm.
He's written several other books since then, but he talks a lot about he writes a lot about attraction and seduction, and it's very interesting. He has such interesting work, and I reference his work a lot in my videos. Um, because it really does apply to attachment styles and to relationship dynamics. Um, I remember reading one of his quotes. One of his most notable quotes is, um, "Everybody wants more power. Nobody wants less." And this applies to relationships. There's power dynamics in relationships. That's just the truth. That's how it is. So learning how to navigate those power dynamics and I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I mean any relationships with your boss, with your parents, your siblings, whomever. There's going to be some power dynamics. You want to learn how to navigate those in a healthy way so you can build healthy relationships. I don't think power to me it's not about manipulation. It's not about control. No, power is actually, for me, power is actually very healthy. When I say power, I mean power over your emotions, how you navigate relationships. That's and power in your independence. That's very different from control and manipulation and being manipulative towards someone. So, yeah, I want to say Robert Greene is my favorite author in that domain, as far as relationships and life. Yeah, does amazing work.
And it's such an interesting thing there you said about power because, and I'm glad you kind of clarified what you mean by that because I think a lot of people can find that word slightly off-putting, right? Because they
Right,
will
right,
think that it's power over others to
right,
manipulate, to change, to judge, to guide in a specific direction, whilst actually it's much more about that. It sounded to me like what you said, it's much more about self-mastery, and through that self-mastery, creating healthier relationships with yourself and with others. In
right.
terms of in terms of Robert Greene, and I suppose I'm curious about your own life experience, and maybe you have a memory or an experience to share where you have applied something that he has written in your own life. Is it like a memory or an experience that you can think
Hmm.
about where you were like taking that framework or taking that learning and then applying it directly to an experience in your own life?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try to apply as much of it as I can, but I do want to say, um, life is so chaotic, and I remember Robert Greene saying this himself. It was so funny, because he has this book, The 48 Laws of Power, but he said, he was asked, "What's the most important law of those 48 laws? What's the most important law?" So the most important law is Law 48, which is assume formlessness. He said the reason why is because life is so chaotic, it's so unpredictable. You have no idea what's going to happen next. Forget about this book, forget about these laws, and just assume formlessness because life is chaotic, and you have to be able to navigate life in your specific situations, which is going to be different from everybody else's because you're such a unique individual. Your experiences are so unique to you and your experience. So I do try to remember that, not to be so
Mm,
rigid in his teachings. I do like that he said that the most important law is to assume formlessness, be fluid
mm.
in your decision making, in your beliefs, in your morals, in your relationships. You need to assume formlessness, be fluid, and be ready for life's unpredictability, for the chaos in life. So that's uh, that's the law. That's his teaching that I try to remember and apply to every domain of my life. Because he said his first law is never outshine the master. But he said this himself. Okay, so the first law is never outshine the master. Well, maybe tomorrow it's okay to outshine the master. And that is an example of assuming formlessness, of meeting the chaos in life, meeting the unpredictability in life in a way that you can navigate that's specific to your circumstances.
That's really interesting. And it makes me think about, because in Buddhism, I believe, I obviously don't know the word that they would use for it, but they would use the word nothingness, right? Is
Mm,
that in meditation, you experience, or the goal, if there is a goal, is to experience
mhm,
nothingness, right? Which is just a
mhm,
different word for formlessness. I
mhm,
suppose it's interesting. How do you, I mean, we're jumping right into the depths here. And I mean, I know
mhm.
for my life, and it's interesting, it is very much something that I try to practice in my life as well, in the sense that, I suppose I call it nothingness, you would call it formless. I have this phrase which is everything is temporary and everything comes to an end, which
Right.
which again is a different way of saying formlessness, basically, because it's
Yes.
just temporary, basically. And I suppose, how do you, I mean, in my life, I practice that through my meditation practice. I'm not a Buddhist, but it's still something that I find very fundamental to my own practice. Is there a practice behind your formlessness, or is it just a state of being?
Um, that's a good question. Um, assuming when I assume formlessness, I try my best to make sure that I'm following my intuition
Mm,
and not my anxiety, not my
mm,
ego, because it's very easy to fall into the ego, fall into anxiety, into survival mode, and that's where you tend to make stupid decisions.
mm,
So by assuming formlessness, I try my best for me, it looks like making sure that I'm in touch with my intuition,
mm,
looking at my anxiety. objectively calling it for what it is, and then saying, okay, no, I'm not going to follow my anxiety. Rather, I'm going to follow my intuition. What does my intuition tell me? I think a lot of us are living in survival mode these days.
Mm.
The thing about survival mode is it clouds your judgment, it clouds your decision making. Because when you're in survival mode, think about what that means. It's fight or flight. It's life or death. So you're looking at life through a black and white lens. But life is not black or white. There's a lot of grays. There's an infinite number of shades of gray in life. And when you're in survival mode, you can't see those shades of gray. You're just thinking all or nothing, life or death, this or that, when that's not what it is. There's so many in between. There's so many shades of gray. And in order to see those shades of gray, you have to get out of survival mode and you have to look at life, look at your decisions with clarity by following your intuition. So to answer your question, for me, what assuming formlessness looks like is making sure that I'm following my intuition, and not my anxiety.
And it's so funny that you have brought up intuition because it's also something, of course, that I feel I can trust and let guide me. And I was on a walk. I take myself on walks, and I took myself on a walk earlier, and I was listening to an interview between Shawn Mendes and Jay Shetty. He was on his podcast recently, and Shawn was also talking about precisely what you were just saying about, you got to trust your intuition. You got to let your intuition guide you. And he'd been in a conversation with a friend, and the friend had asked him like, "But how do I know if it's my intuition?" So I suppose from John, like, how do you know? How do you know that it's when do you know that it's your intuition and not your anxiety? Like, how does that feel to you? I mean, it'll be obviously be different for everybody, but how does it feel to you?
I think for me, the way how I can tell is if it's my intuition or if it's my anxiety. If it's very impulse, if it's very all or nothing, if it's very extreme, then it's more likely your anxiety. But if it's from a place of calm, clarity, you've taken some time, and you've stepped back and you've taken some time to think things through and let your make sure there's minimal emotions
Mm,
involved, then that will, for me, guide me more towards my intuition. And also, meditative practices are very important in these situations in any big decision making. Being able to
mm,
meditate, think things through. But yeah, don't if it's in a state of heightened emotions, then it's probably anxiety, and you got to be able to recognize that.
mm. What kind of meditation do you practice?
For me, it's very simple. It's very simple. I just stay quiet. I'll focus on my breath work, and I
Hmm.
try to listen. I try to ground myself by listening to all the surroundings around me and
Mm,
just being present in that moment. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future, whatever. I hear cars driving by, and I just listen to those. I hear the birds chirping. I just listen to those. I hear planes flying over my head. I hear the neighbors opening their door, and I just focus in on those sounds.
mm,
And that helps me just be more present. I can hear the neighbors. I can hear the car driving by. I can hear the dogs barking across the street, and I just listen to those as I'm
mm,
focusing on my breath work. And that's for me the
mm,
best way to stay present. It just pulls me away from dwelling on the past. It pulls me out of being so worried about the future, and it just makes me present.
mm. Yeah, which I suppose is what they call like open awareness meditation. I think that's what you would call
Mm,
it, right?
hmm
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of practicing meditation, and it's very simple and accessible and not very complicated, right? I mean, the practice I practice is a bit more complicated, but there's a lot of open awareness included in that meditation, which I think is,
hmm
yeah, just very useful and grounding in the present because, like, all of the sounds that you were just talking about are happening in the present, right? They are there,
Yes.
so they ground you in the present over focusing on the past or leaning into the future.
Yeah, and the thing is, most of the time. when I'm not in a meditative state, we're not paying attention to those sounds. They're happening all the time, but our brain
Mm,
filters them out. We're not paying attention to them. So when I go into that
mm,
meditative state, I'm actually paying attention to them. I hear the cars
mm,
driving by. I can hear the engine. I can hear the dogs. I hear the neighbors. Whatever. I'm actually paying attention. I'm actually consciously aware of those sounds around me. Whereas when I'm not meditating, those sounds are still happening, but I'm not paying attention to them. It's kind of like I take them for
mm,
granted.
yeah, Sam Harris said in one of his podcasts, it was something about meditation is about paying attention to what you're paying attention to,
Mm,
which is very meta, right? It's a very,
right, right. Hmm.
that's incredibly like, you are
Right,
paying
right.
attention to what you are paying attention to. It's like an incredibly meta way of looking at it. I mean, it's, yeah, I found that very mind expansive.
Hmm.
Um, so you run a YouTube account focusing on attachment styles. What
Yes.
is the 101 on attachment styles?
It's funny. Most people have never heard of attachment styles, have never heard of attachment theory. Most of the people I run into, I'll go on dates or I'll talk to friends and I'll meet new people. Most of them have never heard of attachment theory.
Really?
Um, I, yeah, I never heard of attachment theory
Right.
until I kind of just stumbled upon it uh, on YouTube, started studying it myself. But most people have never heard of it. But it plays such an integral part in our relationships.
Yeah.
You know? So I say it's unfortunate they didn't teach this stuff when I was in school. I
Mm.
like to say I learned more from YouTube and TikTok than I ever did from school.
Mm.
But attachment 101. Everybody has an attachment style, it's on a spectrum. You're either securely attached or you're insecurely attached. So there's four attachment styles, and I talk about this a lot on my YouTube channel. A secure attachment style is just you're secure. You're secure with yourself, you're secure in your relationships, you have healthy boundaries, you know what you want in a relationship, you don't play games, a very healthy person. Then there's three insecure attachment styles. You're either anxious, or you're avoidant, or you're fearful, which is the fourth attachment style, which is disorganized,
Mm.
where you very quickly swing between anxious and avoidant, very
Mm.
quickly. Very chaotic. That's the disorganized attachment style. So that's 101. Those are the four main attachment styles. You want me to touch up a bit on each attachment style? Sure.
Mm.
So let's talk about the anxious attachment style first, the first insecure attachment style. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you really struggle with your self-esteem. You really struggle with your independence, and you lack identity if you have an anxious attachment style. You really lack self-identity. In fact, someone with an anxious attachment style identifies by their relationships. They cannot be whole without being in a relationship. They identify by the other person and their relationship with them, and rather than identifying as an individual themselves, which would be, of course, more healthy. So the anxious person, tends to cling on to their relationships, tends to identify by their relationships because they have very low self-esteem, a very low sense of self-worth. And then we move on to the avoidant, the dismissive avoidant, who's hyper independent, complete opposite of the anxious, very hyper independent, very closed off, refuses to be vulnerable, is terrified of vulnerability, terrified of it. They're very wounded inside, but they have such heavy walls. Okay, not boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. They have
Mm.
walls that guard them, guard them from being vulnerable, guard them from having tough conversations. Sometimes in life, in relationships, we have to have hard conversations about
Mm.
about our emotions. Maybe there was an argument or a disagreement. Somebody did something to hurt the other, and we have to have those hard conversations in life, right? A dismissive avoidant refuses to have those conversations. They will run. So this is the attachment style that they will give the silent treatment. They will
Mm.
stonewall. They will cut people off with very little to no reason or explanation. They rather lose the relationship or lose the friend than just have a hard conversation. Sit down and have a hard, healthy conversation. They rather just lose the friend or lose the relationship altogether. And then there's the fearful avoidant, which is the disorganized attachment style, the chaotic one. They switch between anxious and avoidant very chaotically. This is the most indecisive, unpredictable attachment style. There's a reason it's called the disorganized attachment
Mm.
style. Can't really put them in a box. But yeah, they're very the most indecisive attachment style. They don't know what they want. It's like one day they're showing up for you, they're telling you how much they care, they're always going to be there for you, and then that same evening they'll be terrified. They'll be terrified of their
Mm.
emotions. They'll be terrified of their relationship, and they'll just completely stonewall and give you the silent treatment, whatever. So that's the disorganized attachment style. So those are the four main attachment styles in a nutshell. Of course, there's so much more I could go into. There's entire textbooks written on this stuff, but
Sure.
that's pretty much attachment 101 regarding the four main attachment styles.
And where do you find yourself often in those four attachment styles? Like historically, where have you found yourself?
Yeah, historically, I've found myself as the fearful avoidant, disorganized,
Right.
historically. Yeah. Since I've learned about this stuff, I've gained
Mm.
awareness. I've had no choice but to
Mm.
adopt a secure attachment style because now I know this stuff. I've learned about it. I've
Mm.
learned about myself. I've learned about my patterns. I said, okay, something needs to change because
Mm.
this isn't healthy. But so I'm more securely attached these days, given the awareness and education I've acquired. But yeah, historically, I would say I was disorganized, fearful, avoidant. If you like, I can share you a quick story
Yeah,
about
please do.
yeah. So this is so many years ago. This is over 10 years ago. But remember there was this lady. Um, well, I was crazy about her. I was crazy about her. Such a big crush on her. So infatuated by her. And she didn't know that. Okay, I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to express myself. I was too shy. But she was throwing herself at me. She was throwing herself at me. She was just as crazy about me. She was flirting with me, trying to hold my hand. And what did you would think that I'd be excited about this,
Mm.
right? That this would be a good thing. Oh wow, she likes me too. You would think that I would be excited about this. And in a way I was, but I was also terrified. So when she was
Mm.
throwing herself at me, what did I do in response? I was scared. So I pushed her away. I was acting very
Mm.
I was acting very cold towards her. I was acting very distant towards her. I was acting disinterested, like I didn't care, even though inside I was crazy about her. Now, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Because I was scared. I was terrified of uh, being hurt, even though she was,
Mm.
even though she was giving no indication that she intended to hurt me. I was pushing her away. Um, and this is also a trait of the fearful avoidant. They will test their partner. And that's what I was doing in that moment. I was testing her. I was pushing her away. Even though she was throwing herself at me, I was pushing her away because I wanted her to try harder. I was acting cold.
Mm.
I was acting cold and distant because I wanted her to prove herself, right?
Mm.
And this is very, very immature and unhealthy of me. Okay? Very, very immature of me. But I wanted her to prove herself. So I was testing her by pushing her away. I was testing her. When I pushed her away, here's what happened. When I pushed her away, she walked away. She lost
Mm.
interest. She lost interest and she walked away. And in response, now suddenly I became anxious. I was acting avoidant. Then suddenly I became anxious. And then I started chasing her. Now I wanted to get her back. Again,
Mm.
very, very unhealthy pattern. And this was just such a quick switch up. So I tested her. I wanted her to prove herself and try harder, but instead she did the healthy thing and walked away. So immediately I became anxious and started chasing her. And that was such a chaotic relationship dynamic between me and her. It did not work out. It did not work out. But a few years later, we did reconnect and we talked out as friends, and we ended on a good note as friends. So we had a more mature conversation about that years later. But that's just an example of me being a fearful avoidant.
Mm.
That's an example of what it looks like.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you've, hit the nail on the head in so many ways. And you said it earlier. It's like, I'm trying to remember a phrase now, which I cannot remember, but it's like, once you see, you cannot look away, or something in the sense of that.
Uh-huh.
Now you know, right? So
Yeah.
now you know, and so what are you going to do, right? Are you going
Right.
to use that new self-awareness and insight to create change within yourself, or you're just going to
Right.
stay the same, right?
Right.
And of course, it sounds like to me like you've made some changes, and it always, it
I've
just
had
always,
to.
it's that coupling of like knowledge and self-awareness.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
then taking action, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was, as you were talking and just thinking about my own sort of relational patterns, because I think the thing with attachment style is that it can also occasionally be situational, right? So some
Yes.
people,
Yes.
because of the way they behave, they will either make you avoid it, like bring
Yes.
out your avoidance side or your
Yeah.
anxious side, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think there's an interesting. I was reading. There's this one person who I quite like. He writes a lot about love, and one of the things he said is that over time, if somebody's behavior is causing you such anxiety, it probably means that there is something in their behavior that's leading you to feel anxious, and so are then like they're not helping you to feel secure. Of course, it's much more complicated than that because you need to ask for it and blah blah blah. But
Right.
there might be something within their behavior. It might be that you are with an avoidant, right? And I think that's something I've experienced in the past is that I have been like all in, they have been all in, and then they have become avoidant, and that has brought out my anxiety whilst I've been with
Yeah.
others who's helped me feel secure, and that's brought out the more secure side of me. So it's an interesting thing to observe or notice when that kind of dynamic bring out different energies.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. It can be very situational. Here's
Mm,
the thing. Here's the thing with a secure attachment style. Someone who has a solid secure attachment style, they still feel anxiety. They still feel all these
mm,
emotions, but they're human. They still feel anxiety. They still feel those emotions that you're describing, even when they're with an avoidant. But someone who is truly secure has awareness of their anxiety, knows their boundaries,
mm,
knows what they want, knows when to walk away. They still
mm,
they still hurt just like the rest of us. They still feel all those those anxious emotions, but they know when to draw them. They're very objective. They know how to remain objective through their anxiety, through their emotions. They know how to
mm,
remain objective. And even if they're with an avoidant or whomever, they know when to draw the line and walk
mm,
away and say, okay, this isn't going to work for me. You're giving me the silent treatment. This isn't going to work for me. I'm walking away. I'm going to go find somebody
mm,
else who doesn't do this. Even though I'm hurt, even though I feel anxious, I'm not going to give in to that and chase you more
mm,
because you're giving me the silent treatment. You're stonewalling me. That doesn't work for me. I can't be in a relationship with someone like that. So even though I'm hurting, even though I have so much anxiety right now, I'm going to walk away from this. And that's the hallmark of a secure person.
Right, I'm so glad you brought that forward because precisely it's that, isn't it? The secure
Mhm.
attachment will say no thank you and draw the line
Yes,
when
yes.
someone is
Even though they're
behaving
hurting.
in, even though they're hurting. which
Yeah.
is, I mean, which is what I've done every time. I have been hurting, but I've gone, no, thank you very much. This is not
Right.
it,
Right.
basically.
Whereas an
Interesting.
whereas an anxious person will give in to those anxieties and continue to chase, and try harder because they lack boundaries. They're not securely attached. They lack boundaries, and they're going to give into that anxiety, and they're going to try to prove themselves to the avoidant. Um, so they're going to chase and try harder. Whereas
Mm.
a secure person won't do that.
Yeah, they will be like, see you later.
Mhm.
I don't know if it is a contradiction or where the line is drawn, because you were talking about earlier about when somebody is anxiously attached, they over-identify with a
Yeah,
relationship and they don't have an identity by themselves. But
right,
right before we started talking about attachment styles and relationships, we were talking about formlessness and nothingness,
right.
which in so many ways doesn't have an identity and it's sort of malleable and it's changing. So how does
Hmm.
one, I mean, I kind of know it to myself, but how does one reconcile? Because it's of course really important to have an identity and a sense of self and a groundedness in your body and who you are, whilst
Hmm.
at the same time retaining that sense of formlessness or nothingness. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think the sense of formlessness is more of a to me that's more of a strategy, more of a tool, not so much an identity.
Mm,
It's more of a
mm,
tool to guide you, a compass to guide you in life, to guide your decision making. Being formless doesn't mean just be chaotic and impulsive and make ridiculous decision making. No, that's not what it means.
mm,
You can still maintain a solid identity using the tool of formlessness as a compass to guide you in life, guide your decision making.
mm.
That's how I would respond.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. How interesting. And I mean, it's I was watching this video. There's this guy on Instagram who sort of he is spiritual, but he's quite he makes like these parody videos of the worst kind of spirituality that exists out there. And he
Hmm.
was talking about the because of course it's like it's important to sort of connect with your inner child and parent your inner
Hmm.
child and sort of work with that. But what he was talking about is that there's other people in sort of the more spiritual space who sort of prize the eternal child, right? So they actually never grow up and they never take responsibility and they never take accountability, which actually is a really important part of growing up and maturing.
Yes.
So it's like
Yes.
your inner child can still bring playfulness, but they shouldn't rule the show, basically.
Yes. Yes. And how I differentiate the two is these two words, okay? Are you childlike or are you childish?
Hmm.
So if you're childlike, you're very in tune with your creative mind, your imagination, your creativity. That's being childlike. We all need that to be creative, to be artistic, to be curious about
Hmm.
so many things in life. That's the healthy part. To be childish is to be immature. You don't want to grow up. You don't want to take responsibility. You don't want to take accountability. You don't want to have hard conversations or apologize when you're in the wrong or admit that you're wrong. That's childish. So that's how I would differentiate those two.
I love that. And I think that's a much more accessible way of looking at it, especially if you're not into like the most spiritual lingo that exists on the
Right.
internet. You know,
Right.
I think that's such an accessible way of looking at it. So
Mm.
let's say somebody is anxiously attached and they are
Mhm.
just like lost in the nightmare of anxiety. They're like,
Right.
they don't see any way out. They're
Right.
completely in that maelstrom of anxiety.
Right.
If you were working with somebody or talking to somebody who were lost in that space, like what are a few different ways that you would suggest to them that they, yeah, moved on from that?
or got out of
Oh,
that maelstrom?
yeah, I would tell them. I would tell them, listen, I would tell them, um, you are very anxious right now about this relationship, and this is no longer a love story. This is not a love story anymore, because this is not what love looks like. Um, you have to, there's two things, there's two things you can do. Either you want to get this person back, an ex, a partner, whomever, either you want to get them back or you want to get over them and move on.
Mm,
But those paths are the same. Okay, whether you want to get them back or whether you want to move on, the path is the same, which
mm,
is you have to get healthy. You have to get healthy. You have to get grounded. You have to get over this anxiety. That can only be done by letting go of the person, surrendering control, and coming back to your own identity, finding whatever that is, and rebuilding your own identity, and surrendering that person and trusting the unknown. It takes a very mature mind to come to terms with that, to say to yourself, okay, I am surrendering control and I am trusting the unknown, because that's a very selfless act. It's a
mm,
very selfless act to do. I would say to that anxious person, yeah, this isn't a love story anymore. This is about you getting healthy and overcoming your anxiety. So you need to go do things like meditation, exercise, find whatever it is you're looking for in life, a goal that you're chasing, a hobby or something, where you start focusing on your health, exercise, meditation, ice baths, cold showers, whatever. And it's going to take some time, because
mm,
anxiety is biology. It's
mm,
neurochemistry. Okay. It's cortisol. I would say to that person, forget about this, forget about your relationship, forget about your ex. You have one goal. That is to reduce your cortisol, because your cortisol is what puts you in survival mode, and that's what causes anxiety.
mm,
You have one goal, reduce your cortisol. That takes time. That takes time where you need to be away from this person, away from your partner, and out of contact with them, and focusing on yourself and giving time for your cortisol levels to come back down to normal so that you can look at things objectively, clearly, and be healthy again. Then once you're in a healthy place, once your cortisol is down and you're healthy again, okay, then you can consider the idea of a relationship with that other person. But you usually find that they're not a good fit for you, that you don't even want them anymore. Once you've taken time to cool down and get back to a healthy state. That's what I would say to the anxious person who can't find a way out. I would say there is a way out. Lower your cortisol. That takes
mm.
time.
That takes time. It's a very practical, yeah, again, very like down to earth and practical way of looking at it. Again, I was listening,
Mhm.
and it relates to something Sean said in that interview, and it's I ran this love workshop a few weeks ago, and it was highlighting that there is so many different types of love out there, right? There's like the Greek have 8 different words for love.
Mm.
And it's something that Sean also said in the interview, which was that, he is single at the moment. So what he is doing is that he is currently embracing all different forms of love beyond, because I think we can sometimes obsess over romantic love, right? But
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
there's love for your family, there's love for your friends, there's love for your work, there's love
Yeah.
for giving. And I think, there's something really powerful about, communicating that there's so many different ways to receive and give love beyond a romantic relationship, which is just as valid as a romantic relationship. Because again, I think, of course, there's lots of meaning to have from a romantic companionship relationship, but there's so many different ways to experience love, basically.
Yes. Yes.
And I love that he articulated, and I'm going to write something about it because I thought that was a really grounded, again, something which is quite can be quite useful for people to experience. So, what is your favorite? Where in, because you're in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Where do you go for ice baths?
I don't really do ice baths. I do cold showers at my home. You know, ice baths are a thing I've, but
I know.
no, I just prefer to just take cold showers in my own home. It's just easier.
It's just easier. Yeah, no, I know. I'm slightly pulling your leg there. We actually have a lovely place in London. It's so nice. It's called Arc Community, where you go in Canary Wharf, and they have a sauna and they have ice baths, and it's all
Yeah,
like
yeah.
incredibly lovely put together. Basically, I did my first ever ice bath there, and it was so interesting. I was having a moment where I could feel so I was doing the ice bath with a friend, and she was beginning to have a moment of like hyperventilation because she couldn't bear the cold, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just like my sort of primal masculine protector energy just sort of came to the surface, and
Uh-huh.
I managed to like not physically but like energetically hold her in that moment, and you could feel
Yeah.
her energy was like coming down, and I don't know if I'd sort of in such a distinctive way that kind of protector energy
Yeah.
just sort of came to the surface in such a strong way in that moment. It was really, it felt incredibly primal for some reason.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Have you
that's
had
very
any have you had any similar experiences like yourself where you can feel that sort of primal protector energy come to the surface?
um yeah, it's interesting. You talk about there are so many different types of love.
Mm,
I work with children, you know, I work with kids at
love that.
yeah, at an elementary school. Now, I'm not a parent, okay? I've never had my own kids, but
Mm,
sometimes I'll look at these kids and I spend so much time with them. I'll look at them as like they're my own. Like I have that
mm,
primal instinct of wanting to be a father,
mm,
wanting to be a parent, and I'll just look at these kids and like, you know, for a moment, for a few hours a day, they're my kids. And I guess that father figure in me, that primal instinct, wanting to be a father, comes
mm.
out a lot in those moments. I'm fascinated with kids. I love working with them. I love, you know, being able to educate them and guide them. So yeah, I mean, I certainly experienced that sense of those primal emotions coming up. You know, wanting to be a father for those kids.
Yeah, and it's so interesting with kids. I don't have kids myself either. Um, but I do feel it coming through again when I'm around certain children, that sort of father primal thing coming through
Yeah,
again. And
yeah.
it's interesting with masculinity these days, right? Because it's something
Mhm.
which um, I suppose it's under a period of evolution in many
Yeah.
ways. Like, I think it's
Mhm.
a time of evolution. Do you have any thoughts around masculinity? Is that something that you've sort of thought through or leaned into or sort of considered, or is that not a topic that you have explored that much?
No, I've definitely thought about it. I haven't really explored it much.
Mm,
Robert Greene talks a lot about masculinity.
mm,
Um, you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of content online about masculinity,
mm,
about these alpha male types, these
mm,
red pill alpha male types, and
mm,
you know, they think masculinity is having a lot of women, having fast cars, you know, being
mm,
flashy, a bunch of these material items. That's not masculinity to me. That's to me that's just a deep sense of insecurity.
mm,
You know, my channel when I talk about attachment styles, you know, I try not to I don't want to lean into the domain of, you know, hookup culture. These
sure.
these there's a lot of dating coaches out there that are these men, you know, who claim to be masculine, all claim all kinds of masculinity, and they're alpha males, and they will just teach young men just how to hook up with women.
Mm,
And to me, that's not masculinity. You know, that's just deep insecurity. I try to lean away from that with my content.
great.
You know, I think I think masculinity is not that, not having a bunch of women and fast cars and all these material items and calling yourself an alpha male and you know, it's not masculinity to me. I think masculinity is being able to identify with yourself, being confident in yourself, knowing your mistakes, your flaws, owning them, not owning your insecurities, which we all have, by the way, owning your
Mm.
insecurities, and then seeing how you can do better, seeing how you can improve on those, and forming healthy relationships, not just romantic relationships, relationships with your brother, your sister, your family, friends, whomever. Um, having that sense of, that what you were just talking about, that protector instinct,
Mm.
um, without falling into codependency, without being obsessive, but
Sure.
just, being having that sense of a healthy sense of that protector instinct. I think that's where true masculinity lies. And yeah, having your identity, having healthy relationships, um, and yeah, being grounded in yourself, being aware of your emotions, being aware of your insecurities, owning your flaws, owning your mistakes. That's where true masculinity lies for me.
I couldn't agree more. I came across this video on YouTube of this person critiquing the alpha male YouTubers. And
Right,
there's a
right.
video of this guy who's making
Hmm.
content, like an alpha dude, basically,
Hmm.
of how to pick up your luggage if you dropped it. That's
Hmm.
that's like, and how to do that, like, and how to do that as an alpha male.
Hmm. That's
I was
so.
just-
I didn't know there
I
was a
was
way
like,
to do that.
and
Wow.
there's a way to sit, there's a way to walk, there's a way to pick up your luggage. I was like, come on. Like who is
Yeah.
watching this stuff? But this is what I mean, this is what I was always interesting with you talking about working with kids, right? Because kids are the people who have young, impressionable minds
Yes.
who
Yes.
are watching this type of content and then think that there's a way to pick up your luggage. There's an alpha male to pick up your luggage, which
Right.
I think
Right. Right.
is, I mean, I find it just like flabbergasting, basically. My mind can't almost compute it.
Yeah. 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 I'm not surprised, but I'm not surprised by anything these days. But yeah, I don't, I mean, yeah, I don't understand that. But I mean, these alpha male influencers that I see on social
Mm,
media, I mean, they'll come up with all kinds of things about
mm,
how to treat women, how to yeah, be abusive towards women,
mm,
and how to manipulate them, and that's how you get women to chase you. And I don't want to feed into that with my content.
mm,
I don't feed into that alpha male hookup culture stuff.
mm.
I didn't realize there was a way to pick up your luggage. It's just
I know, it's like,
it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could pick up your luggage, but no. What I like to say is, I certainly do not identify as an alpha
mm,
male. I just
mm,
that concept just doesn't resonate with me.
mm,
I'd like to call myself a gentleman. I strive to be a gentleman, certainly.
mm,
And I guess my advice to young men is, there's alpha. There's these. Would you rather identify as an alpha male, or would you rather identify as a gentleman? And I try to identify as a gentleman. What does that embody? Well, all the things that I just discussed as far as masculinity, you know,
mm,
um, owning your mistakes, owning your securities, being respectful towards others, um, and having a strong sense of identity, knowing what your boundaries are in any relationships. So
mm.
I have no interest needless to say, I have no interest in being an alpha male. I'd much rather be a gentleman.
That's such a lovely way to put it. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
that energy of healthy protector, generosity, open, giving, caring, all of those
Mhm.
values that are really important, but also somebody who holds, like, takes accountability and everything that
Yes.
you have just said. And I'm so glad, I probably wouldn't have. I probably, if I'd found on your YouTube that you were making content about how to hook up with women, I probably wouldn't have asked you to come on. You know, that is the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is. I suppose there isn't in there's is there something interesting to? I suppose there's something interesting to learn about what is that? Because to me, like you pointed to earlier, is that there is a level of insecurity in there somewhere, right? That is
Yes,
what that's
yes.
all about. And I suppose it's an interesting thing to try and understand where that insecurity is coming from, and then, I don't know, throwing an intervention of trying to, I mean, that's much more responsibility than anyone has, but trying to
Right.
throw an intervention of how to like help them see their mistakes, I guess, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So just to guide us back to relationships and towards the end, let's say somebody is watching this and they are looking to get into a new relationship. Um, what are what are three tips that you have for anyone who is now looking to enter into a new relationship and they just want to make sure that everything is quote unquote in order, or they would just want to make
Sure.
sure that they are showing up as their best self, I guess,
Sure.
when
Yeah.
they're getting themselves back out on the dating market? Like, what would your three main tips be?
Sure. Sure. My first tip is learn about attachment styles. Learn what your attachment
Mm.
style is and work on yourself.
Mm.
Because you probably have some, it's on a spectrum. You probably have some insecure attachment traits. Learn what those are and work on them. Work on them for yourself. Okay. That's my first tip. My second tip is try to learn about your partner's attachment style. Try to learn
Mm.
about what their needs are. Learn about what their insecure attachment traits are. Okay. So that you can navigate those in a healthy way. Maybe they have certain needs of their own that in a relationship. Learn what those are. Okay. And then my third tip would be um, from the very beginning, from the very beginning of that relationship, on the first date even, make your intentions clear about what
Mm.
you're looking for in this relationship. Say that on the first date. Say to your partner, "Hey, I'm looking for something serious. I'm looking for to build something long term. I'm looking to build a partnership with someone." And some people might say, "Oh, well, that's too much. That's too much too soon. Um, you're going to scare that person away." Um, it's not too much too soon. If the person gets scared away, then guess what? They're not looking for something serious. Well, not with you, at least.
Mm.
And now you've just saved yourself so much time. You've saved
Mm.
yourself so much time because a healthy, secure person is not afraid to state their intentions from the get-go. A secure person does that. They say, "Hey,
Mm.
you know, look, they don't show up on the first date ready to propose. That's not what I'm talking about. Not what I'm talking about. Um, what I mean is they just make their intentions clear from the get-go.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm looking for something long-term, a serious relationship that we can build together at a healthy pace. That's what I'm looking for. They make that intention clear from the get-go because they understand how short life is, how
Mm.
limited time is, and they don't have time to waste. So that's my third tip is make that intention clear on the first date even from the very beginning.
That's so powerful, and I couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
I think too many people are afraid of stating what they want and also
Right.
asking
It's
for what
scary.
the partner wants. It's terrifying
Yeah.
because you are, well, not you, but people are afraid of rejection, right? They're
Yeah.
afraid of
Yeah.
being rejected, but actually, it's not rejection. It's just
Yeah.
information.
It's filtering. Yeah.
It's filtering. It's not a
Yeah.
rejection. It just means that just wasn't for you. It's redirection. It's filtering.
Yeah.
It's a way of going, okay, like for example, so I mean some people might find this odd, but I personally don't really want children, right? I don't think that's in my path. So
Uh-huh.
I try by the second date, I try to figure out how important is it for them to have kids.
Right.
And if it's like 100%, I'm like, okay, this is never
It's,
going to work out.
it's not a fit. Yeah.
It's not a fit, and that's okay,
Yeah, you
right?
say, you say it in a respectful way and just let them know. And yeah, it's just, it's not
Yeah,
a fit. You want kids. I don't. This isn't going to work. But, thank you for your time. And that's
yeah,
still, and that's, you still take that experience with you, whatever you learned into the next date, into the next relationship, whatever,
yeah,
until you find the partner who aligns with the same values as you, is not as interested in children or
yeah, absolutely.
whatever else it is. Yeah.
Whatever else it is.
Mhm.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's such a powerful tip to just be as communicative and upfront with
And
everything as you
direct,
can.
and
Yeah,
direct. Yeah.
and direct. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, is there a fourth tip that you would like to say, but I didn't ask? I asked for three, so you kept it to three. Is there a fourth tip that you would like to squeeze in there?
Yeah, I just said it. Be direct and whatever it
Yeah.
is, be direct about your intentions. Be direct about something that's uncomfortable.
Mm,
Be direct about whatever it is. If your partner hurt you, be direct about it. Say it in a soft, healthy way. You don't need to come off as attacking or accusatory, but just be direct
mm,
about whatever it is, and that can save so many relationships.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an interesting thing. I listen to way too many podcasts, but I listen to
Hmm.
podcasts whilst I'm exercising, basically.
Hmm.
And it just brought something to mind, which I think is really interesting. Because of course now we have the age of AI, right? The age of
Yeah.
AI is crashing into us. And I was listening to a podcast. Do you know who Simon Sinek is?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, he was on Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO, and he was talking about how AI might like ruin our human skills, which a human
Hmm.
skill is to tumble
Hmm.
through an argument with your partner,
Hmm.
right? And it's such an interesting clip, and people should really go and listen to that podcast about the dangers of using ChatGTP to navigate relationship challenges. I mean, I actually don't entirely agree with him because I think there is things you can learn in suggestions
Sure.
that it makes and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. Hmm.
But he has some really, really interesting points. And I think, one thing that you just said, which is to just be direct in a soft
Hmm.
and kind way, and that will
Yeah.
save many relationships. But
Yeah.
yeah, go and listen to that podcast episode. It was quite recent, so it's a really, really good one.
Yeah. You
This is
can link it in the description of this video.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll do that. This has been such a pleasure, John. Is there
It
any
has. It has.
final things you'd like to share before we bring it to a close?
No, just thank you for having me. It's yeah, it's always good to talk about this stuff. It's
Mm,
again, like I said, most people have never heard of
mm.
attachment styles. So if anybody's watching this episode and you want to learn about attachment styles, you can come visit my channel, and that's all we talk
Yes.
about on my channel is attachment styles. And
Yeah.
I think everybody should learn about them, even if you're already in a relationship, in a marriage, whatever. Still learn about it because
Mm.
it's gonna help. It's gonna help solidify that marriage. Whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming on,
Tor.
John. I'll put
Oh,
all
thank you
your
for having me.
details in the
Mhm.
description below the video. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, Tor. Thank you so much for having me.